The colony stood quiet on the edge of the alien plane. Metal walls marked the boundary, and inside those walls, human settlers moved about with the slow pace of people who carried heavy work on their shoulders every day. Rian was one of them. He was not a soldier or a leader. He was a worker, someone who carried tools, repaired broken machines, and kept the colony's pumps running. He never thought of himself as a hero. His life was simple, and he wanted nothing more than to keep the machines working and food growing for the people around him. The day began as any other. The sun above the world was pale and gave little warmth. Rian walked across the dusty ground toward the water plant with a toolbox in hand. The colony gates were half open, and outside he could see the endless stretch of silver grass that swayed in the thin wind. He thought about how empty this planet was, how lonely it felt, and how humans had built their small lives here, far from Earth. He had grown used to that loneliness. What he had not grown used to were the neighbors, the alien race that lived in tall citadels of crystal, far beyond the plane. Few humans had seen them up close, but Rian knew their presence well enough. The settlers called them the Avanar, tall beings who kept to their own lands. There was peace, but it was fragile. Peace ended without warning. The attack came fast. Sirens cut the morning silence, and shouts filled the air. Rian looked up and saw black shapes in the skyships that were not Avanar, not human, but raiders. Their engines screamed, and fire spilled from their weapons. In a breath, the colony gates shook with impact. Dust rose. Families ran for shelter. Rian dropped his tools and ran toward the sound of children crying. The raiders rushed in. Tall, armored figures with masks that made them look like beasts. They shouted in a language Rian did not know, cutting down anyone who resisted. Rian was no fighter, but his legs carried him forward without thought. He pulled one boy behind a broken crate and yelled for others to run. His chest burned with fear, but he forced himself to keep moving. That was when he saw her. She was not human. She was smaller than the raiders, smaller even than him. Her skin glowed faintly, pale like silver light, and her eyes were wide with terror. She was a child, and she wore robes unlike anything he had seen in the colony. He did not know how she came to be here, but he could see clearly what was about to happen. One raider had spotted her. The masked figure raised a weapon, and the child froze, too afraid to move. Rian did not think. His body chose before his mind could catch up. He ran forward, grabbing a piece of metal pipe from the ground. With all his strength, he swung at the raider's arm. The strike made the weapon fall, and the raider turned on him with a roar. Rian felt claws rake across his side, hot pain burning through his body. He stumbled, but did not stop. He pushed the child behind him and faced the towering figure. The raider lifted a blade, ready to finish him. Then a strange light cracked across the air. The child raised her hands. For a moment, a shield of shimmering energy burst forth. It struck the raider and sent him flying back. Rian barely understood what had happened. The child trembled, her glow fading, and she looked up at him as though waiting for him to move. He knew she could not hold such power for long. Without thinking, he lifted her into his arms. She was light, fragile, and he could feel her shaking. Rian ran. The colony burned around him. Raiders stormed every corner, pulling food and supplies into their ships. He darted through the chaos, holding the child close, ignoring the blood running down his side. Smoke stung his eyes. He coughed, but kept running. Every breath hurt, but he knew he had to keep her safe. He had no idea who she was. The thought of leaving her behind was impossible. He reached a broken wall where the colony shield had failed. Beyond it stretched the open plain. He stumbled out, his legs weak, and collapsed on the ground. The child clung to his neck, whispering sounds he could not understand. Rian pressed a hand to his wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but his vision blurred. He wondered if this was the end. If he would die here with an alien child in his arms. The sound of wings cut through the air. Figures descended from the sky. Tall and shining, their armor of crystal glinting in the pale sun. The Avanar had come. Their weapons struck with light, their movements swift and graceful. The raiders fell back under their power. One of the crystal warriors knelt before Rian, eyes wide as they saw the child in his arms. The warriors spoke quickly in their own tongue and lifted both him and the child with surprising strength. Rian lost sense of time. The next thing he knew, he lay on a bed softer than anything he had ever touched. Warmth wrapped around him, and his wound was bound with glowing bands. His head turned, and he saw the child sitting beside him, her hand resting on his arm. She looked at him with those strange silver eyes full of trust. Behind her stood a figure taller than any human, her form graceful, her face fierce yet calm. She was no ordinary Avanar. She was the queen. The queen's gaze fixed on Rian. Her voice was deep and steady. Her words foreign yet somehow clear to him through the translator device placed near his head. She spoke of gratitude, of honor, and of a debt that could not be forgotten. Her daughter was alive because of him, and for that, she said, his blood was not spilled in vain. Rian tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He only shook his head weakly, pointing to the child, then to her. He did not want thanks. He had done what any person should have done. But the queen's eyes did not move from him. There was weight in her stare, as though she saw more in him than he saw in himself. The child smiled faintly, her small hand holding tightly to his. Rian closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of her touch, and let the darkness of sleep take him. Far above, the queen stood silent, her thoughts hidden from all. Her warriors bowed to her, waiting for orders, but she gave none. Instead, she looked once more at the human who had bled for her daughter. She had never seen such a thing from his kind, and deep in her heart she knew she would not let him go so easily. Rian woke to the sound of a strange hum. At first he thought it was the colony's water pumps again, but when he opened his eyes, he saw high ceilings made of crystal that glowed faintly. The walls curved in shapes he could not describe, smooth and bright like living stone. He realized he was not in the colony. He was inside the citadel of the Avanar. His chest tightened with unease, and his first thought was to wonder if he was a prisoner. His body still ached, but the sharp pain from his wound was gone. Bands of golden light wrapped across his side. They pulsed gently, warm against his skin. He tried to sit up, but the bed beneath him was so soft, it felt like it wanted him to stay still. His hand brushed the glowing band, and it answered by shifting, almost alive. He shivered. It was not like any healing tool humans had. The Avanar were far ahead in science and power. That much was clear. A small voice broke his thoughts. He turned and saw the child he had carried. She was sitting on a tall seat beside him, her silver eyes bright. When she saw him awake, her face lit with relief. She leaned forward, whispering words he could not understand, then gently pressed her small hand against his arm. He understood the meaning, even if he did not know the language. She was glad he was alive. Before he could speak, the chamber doors opened. Several tall Avanar entered. They were graceful, their bodies moving like flowing water. They wore armor of crystal plates that caught the light. At the center of them walked the queen herself. She was taller than all of them, her robes shimmering like woven starlight. Her eyes were strong, deep with wisdom and power, yet not without warmth. The moment she entered, the child ran to her, clinging to her robes. The queen touched her gently and lifted her gaze to Rian. The translator stone near his bed glowed again, turning her language into human speech. Her voice was calm but firm. She said he had shown great courage when he saved her daughter. She said his actions were not forgotten, and that he was now honored among her people. Rian listened, unsure how to answer. He cleared his throat and tried to speak. "I only did what anyone would do," he said. His voice was rough, and he felt small before her gaze. She was just a child. "I could not leave her." The queen tilted her head as though studying him. "Yet you bled for one not of your kind," she said through the stone. "You could have run. You could have saved only yourself. But you did not." Her words carried weight, not only as thanks, but as something more. He did not know what she meant to do with that weight, and it made his chest heavy. For the next few days, Rian was kept in the citadel to heal. At first, he wanted to leave. He told the Avanar guards he needed to return to the colony, but they never allowed it. They only said the Queen had ordered him to rest. The more he saw of the Citadel, the more he realized he was not a prisoner in chains, but he was not free either. Every door opened only when a guard allowed it. Every hall led him back to the healing chambers or the great crystal gardens. He felt like a guest who was not allowed to say goodbye. The child stayed close to him each day. She laughed in her soft voice and tried to teach him simple words of her language. He learned her name was Alira. She pointed to things in the room, saying their names slowly, waiting for him to repeat them. When he said them wrong, she giggled, covering her mouth with both hands. For Rian, those moments were strange and gentle. He had never spoken with an Avanar child before. She was not so different from the children of his own people. She laughed the same. She trusted the same. And when she held his hand, forgot for a moment how far he was from his own kind. But not everyone in the Citadel trusted him. One evening, as he walked in the garden of crystal trees, he overheard voices. Two Avanar warriors stood at a distance, their armor faintly glowing in the starlight. Their words carried through the still air. The translator stone picked them up enough for him to understand. It is dangerous, one said. He is human. He should not be so close to the Queen, nor to her daughter. He is honored for saving her, the other replied. The Queen has chosen to keep him, but why? He is weak. He is fragile. What can his kind offer us? If the raiders come again, will he fight as we do? He already has, the second answered softly. Do not forget he bled when we had not yet arrived. Ow. The first warrior fell silent, but the tone of his voice still carried doubt. Rian felt a chill in his chest. He knew he was only a worker, not a fighter, and he knew their words carried truth. He could not lift weapons of light as they did. He had no armor, no great strength. He had only acted on instinct when the child was in danger. If another attack came, he did not know if he would survive. That night the Queen called him to her hall. The chamber was vast, with a ceiling so high it vanished into shadows. The walls glowed faintly, and guards stood like statues along the edges. The Queen sat upon a seat of crystal that seemed grown from the floor itself. Illyra sat beside her, leaning close with trust. Rian bowed his head, unsure of the right way to show respect. The Queen spoke again through the stone. You wish to leave? She said simply. You think of your people in the colony. Rian lifted his head slowly. Yes, they need me. I am no warrior, but I keep the pumps and machines working. Without water, they cannot live. The Queen's gaze did not soften. And yet, you are needed here. My daughter calls you protector. She trusts you as she trusts no one else. Do you know what that means, human? Rian shook his head. I am only a man who carried her away from danger. The Queen rose, her tall form shining in the crystal light. She stepped down from her seat and stood before him. She was taller by more than a head, and her presence felt like a mountain before a single tree. You bled for her, she said. No Avanar outside my own guard has ever done such a thing. Among us, the bond of blood is sacred. You may think your act small, but it is not small to us. To save a child of the Queen is to become part of her line. Her words shook him. He did not know how to answer. I never asked for that, he said quietly. I only wanted her safe. And yet it is done, she said firmly. Your will does not change what is bound. Lyra tugged at her mother's robe, then reached for Rian's hand. She pressed her small fingers into his palm, smiling softly. Rian's heart twisted. He could not deny her trust. It was as heavy as any chain. The Queen looked at him with eyes that carried both strength and something hidden, something he could not yet name. You will remain here until I decide otherwise, she said. You may walk the halls. You may heal. You may teach my daughter of your kind. But you will not leave. Rian bowed his head, but inside his thoughts churned. He had no power to refuse, yet he felt the pull of two worlds as people in the colony who needed his skill. And this child who saw him as more than he ever believed himself to be. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind long after he left the hall. Bound by blood, protector of her daughter, a guest who could not walk away. That night, Rian lay awake in the soft bed, staring at the glowing ceiling. He wondered if he had lost his freedom forever. He wondered if his own people thought him dead. Yet when Alira's laughter returned to his mind, he also wondered if maybe, just maybe, his life had changed into something greater than he had ever imagined. The days passed slowly for Rian inside the citadel. Each morning he woke to the soft glow of crystal walls and the quiet songs of Avanar voices drifting through the air. The pain in his body faded, but the weight in his heart grew heavier. He wanted to see the colony again. He wanted to make sure his people were alive and safe after the raid. Every time he asked the guards, they gave him the same answer. The Queen has ordered you to remain. At first, he thought of escaping. He studied the halls and the doors, looking for a way to slip out. But the citadel was built like a maze, every passage curving back into itself. The guards moved silently, always present, their glowing eyes watching. He soon realized there was no escape, not without drawing attention. He was trapped, though the prison was made of shining beauty instead of chains. The child Alira remained by his side. She followed him through the gardens and the tall crystal towers. She tugged his hand, showing him things he had never seen: flowers that shone like starlight, pools of water that floated above the ground as if they ignored gravity, creatures with wings made of thin light that flitted between the branches. She laughed often, and her voice made the walls feel warmer. With her, Rian almost forgot his worries. Almost, the Queen watched all of this in silence. At meals, she sat at the head of the hall, her eyes never leaving her daughter, and often those eyes drifted to Rian as well. Her gaze unsettled him. It was not cruel, but it was heavy, as if she measured every breath he took. One evening, Rian gathered his courage and asked again to leave. The Queen had summoned him to her private hall, where the walls shimmered with deep blue light. He stood before her, his hands clenched at his sides. "My Queen," he said slowly, the translator stone glowing at his chest. "I thank you for your care, but my people need me. The colony cannot run without those who keep the machines alive. I must return to them." The Queen did not move from her tall seat. Her robe flowed across the floor like water, her crown of crystal glimmering faintly. Her voice came steady and low. "You believe your people cannot live without you, yet you forget the truth. You are already bound by blood to mine." Rian's jaw tightened. "I did not ask for that bond. I am only human. My life is simple. I saved your daughter because it was right, not because I wanted a reward." Her eyes narrowed slightly, though her voice remained calm. "Do you think we see this as reward? No, human. It is a truth written in blood. My daughter's life was in your arms. You carried her from death. You bled for her. That cannot be undone. Among us, such a bond is sacred. You are part of her circle now." Rian's heart thudded. "But I have my own people, my own world. I cannot stay here forever." The Queen rose from her seat, her tall form casting long shadows. She stepped down the crystal steps, her gaze never leaving him. "You think forever belongs to you. It does not. You will remain until I decide your path. That is my word, and my word is law." Rian wanted to shout, to fight, but he knew the truth. He was powerless before her. The guards at the hall stood like statues, waiting only for a sign. If he resisted, he would be crushed. So he bowed his head, not in agreement but in defeat. And the Queen turned away, her robe sweeping the floor like a wave. Later that night, Rian sat alone in the garden. The crystal trees glowed faintly, and their light reflected in the water that drifted like mist. He pressed his hand against his side, where the scar of his wound still ached. He thought of the colony, of the faces of the settlers, of the work left undone. He thought of home. He wondered if they believed he was dead. Alira found him there. She sat beside him, her small hand brushing his arm. She whispered words he did not fully understand, but her eyes told him enough. She did not want him to leave. For her, he was not only a protector, but something more, something like family. Rian's heart twisted. He cared for her. He could not deny that. Yet he also knew he did not belong in this shining world. The days turned into weeks. Rian became part of life in the citadel, though not by choice. The queen commanded him to sit with Alira during her lessons, to tell her of human ways and human history. He told her stories of Earth, of oceans and mountains, of forests taller than the towers of the citadel. She listened with wide eyes, and sometimes even the queen listened from afar, though she never admitted it. The Avanar Council, however, was not pleased. They gathered often, their voices rising in the great hall. Rian was not allowed to enter, but he heard whispers. The guards spoke of how many elders questioned the queen's choice. They said a human was weak, unworthy of such closeness. Some even claimed he was a danger, a spy placed among them. One night, as Rian walked the outer halls, he heard more than whispers. Two counselors stood in shadow, speaking in low tones. "The queen is blinded by gratitude," one said. "This human has no place among us. He must be sent away or removed." "Careful," the other replied. "Her daughter will not allow it. She clings to him like a brother. If he is taken, she will grieve. The queen cannot risk her heart." "Then we wait," the first answered darkly. "We wait for him to stumble. Humans are fragile. He will fail, and then we will show her the truth." Rian stepped back into the shadows, his breath heavy. They wanted him gone, or worse. He realized then that he was not only trapped but surrounded by suspicion. The queen might have claimed him as bound, but her council did not share her belief. When he returned to his chambers, he found the queen waiting. She stood near the window, her tall form glowing faintly in the crystal light. She turned her eyes on him as he entered. "You walked close to the council hall?" she said quietly. "You heard their words." Adavin froze. He nodded slowly. "They do not want me here. They are right. I do not belong." The queen stepped closer, her gaze sharp. "Do not listen to them. They fear what they do not understand. You are proof that humanity has strength they cannot see. You are proof that there is more than power and weapons. My daughter trusts you. I trust you. That is enough." Rian shook his head. "But I do not want to be proof. I only want to live my life, to help my people." Her voice hardened. "Your life has already changed. You cannot return to what you were. Do you not see it? Even if I let you go, you would not be the same man who left. The blood you spilled has tied you here. That bond will follow you wherever you run." Her words struck deep. He wanted to deny them, but in his heart he knew she was right. The bond was real. He felt it every time Alira smiled at him, every time the queen's eyes held his. He could not undo what had been done, and yet he also knew he could not remain forever in silence. One day he would have to choose to bow to the queen and her people, or find a way back to his own. That night, as the citadel slept, Rian lay awake staring at the glowing ceiling. His body was healed, but his spirit was torn. He had saved a child, and for that, he had been given honor. But honor had become a chain, and he wondered how long he could carry it before it broke him. The sun had barely risen over the distant horizon when the alarm rang through the citadel. Rian had been asleep, but he woke instantly, heart pounding. He could hear the low hum of the crystal walls vibrating with the queen's command. Something was wrong. The raiders had returned. They had come faster than anyone expected, stronger and more organized. Rian leaped from the soft bed in the healing chamber. His side still ached where he had been wounded before, but he ignored it. Alira ran to him, eyes wide with fear. She grabbed his hand and whispered something he did not understand. Yet he knew her meaning immediately. Danger. Now, outside the chamber, the citadel was alive with motion. The Avanar guards moved swiftly, their crystal armor catching the early light. Rian followed them, unsure of what he could do. He was a human, weak compared to them, yet the fear in Alira's eyes made him feel stronger than ever. He could not run. He could not hide. He had to act. The raiders struck the outer walls first. Explosions rang, sending shards of crystal and dust into the air. Rian watched as the tall Avanar warriors leaped into battle, their weapons of light cutting through the dark shapes of the raiders. They were powerful, precise, and graceful. But Rian noticed something they did not. The raiders moved in patterns, predicting the Avanar movements. If the battle continued as it had before, the citadel would fall. He could not explain why he felt certain. But he shouted above the noise, giving directions as best as he could. The left flank. The raiders will push through there. Move the shields forward. An Avanar warrior paused, turning toward him with surprise. Human, step back. No, Rian shouted. You don't see it? The raiders are circling behind the eastern towers. If you leave them unchecked, the gate will fall. The warrior hesitated. Rian's voice was urgent, his mind racing faster than ever before. He had spent years fixing machines and managing resources in the colony. Patterns, weaknesses, timing, these were things he understood. And now, for the first time, that knowledge mattered in battle. Slowly, the warrior nodded and followed his instructions. The tide began to shift. With Rian's guidance, the Avanar warriors adjusted their positions. They sealed the eastern towers, cutting off the raiders' advantage. Rian moved among them, running along corridors, pointing out weaknesses, showing where the attackers were hiding. His body ached with exhaustion and pain from old wounds. But adrenaline carried him forward. Illyra stayed close the entire time, her small hand holding his. She whispered encouragement in her soft language. Her glow flared occasionally, a shield of light protecting them both from stray weapons. Rian realized then how much she had grown in courage. The child who had clung to him just days before was now fighting in her own quiet way. Hours passed in a blur. Rian had not stopped moving. He climbed walls, dodged falling debris, and guided the Avanar defenders with clear, precise instructions. Slowly, the raiders began to retreat. Their ships left the horizon, engines roaring in frustration. The citadel had survived. In the aftermath, Rian sank to the floor near the crystal gardens, his hands shaking. His side burned where the old wound had opened slightly during the battle. Yet there was a strange warmth in him, a pride he had never felt before. He had helped defend the citadel, not with strength or weapons, but with thought, courage, and careful observation. The queen approached him then. Her robes flowed across the floor like water, and her crown caught the light of the morning sun. She stood tall, towering above him, yet her eyes held something softer, almost grateful. Illyra ran to her mother's side, holding her hand tightly. You see now, she said quietly, her translator stone glowing softly, why he remains with us. He is not just a human. He is proof of something my people have long forgotten. Strength is not only in muscle or weapon, but in heart, in mind, in courage, that acts without thought for reward. Rian looked at her, breath heavy. I only did what anyone would do. I am no hero. The queen knelt slightly, bringing herself closer to his level. Do not deny what is true. You acted where others would have faltered. You inspired not just my daughter, but every warrior who saw you. You are part of this citadel now, whether you wish it or not. Illyra leaned forward, resting her small head on Rian's arm. I am proud of you, she whispered. Rian's throat tightened. He had saved her once, and now she saved him with her words, with her trust. The weight of responsibility, the bond of blood, pressed heavily on his heart. He was no longer just a visitor in this shining world. He had become a guardian, whether he wanted it or not. The queen rose, her presence commanding once more. You will rest now, she said firmly. Your body is needed. Your mind will be needed again, I fear. The raiders may return. But remember this, courage does not die. It spreads. You have shown us that humanity has more to offer than we understood. Rian nodded, still unsure of what his place in this world had become. He had hoped to return home, to the colony and the people he had left behind. Yet he could see now that he had changed. He had grown beyond simple survival, beyond the life he thought he understood. The citadel, the queen. The child he was tied to them in a way that no distance could break, as he lay down in the soft bed once more, his hands brushing the edge of the glowing healing bands. He realized that freedom was no longer simple. He could not walk away from what he had done. He had saved a life, bled for it, and in doing so had bound himself to something far greater than he had ever imagined. Outside, the citadel hummed softly, light reflecting across every surface. The crystal towers shone like stars, tall and unyielding. Rian closed his eyes, listening to the quiet of victory and the steady rhythm of the child's breathing nearby. The bond was real. The queen's words echoed in his mind. The blood he had spilled was not only a mark of survival, but a sign of something enduring. He did not yet know how his story would continue, or how long he would remain in this strange, shining world. Yet one thing was certain. He could no longer be the man who arrived here as a simple worker. He had stepped into a new life, one filled with danger, trust, and the unshakable truth that courage, even from the smallest and weakest of beings, could change the fate of worlds. Rian breathed deeply and allowed the quiet to settle around him. He was tired, battered, and uncertain of the future. But he was alive, and he had proven something more than survival. He had proven that humans, in their simplest form, could stand alongside the mightiest of beings and make a difference. And for the first time he felt a small spark of pride. Not for himself alone, but for what his actions had done for Alira. For the citadel, and for the queen who refused to let him go. He had saved a life, and in saving it, he had discovered something far greater, the bond of trust, courage, and blood that tied him to this new world forever. The citadel was calm after the storm of battle. Rian walked through the crystal halls, his steps echoing softly. Outside, the sun painted the towers in pale light. He had healed as much as possible, yet his mind was restless. Days of fighting had left him exhausted, but the thought of returning to the colony never left his heart. Still, he knew it could not be simple. The bond with Alira and the queen had become real. It was no longer just honor or duty. It was something stronger, unspoken, and impossible to undo. Alira ran toward him as he entered the garden. Her eyes sparkled with the morning light. "Rian," she called softly, her voice carrying warmth. "Come see." She pulled his hand, leading him to a pool where floating light lilies shimmered. He smiled faintly. Her innocence and trust had become a comfort he could not imagine leaving behind. The queen appeared then, her presence steady and commanding. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she observed him, her gaze measuring, thoughtful. Finally, she said, "You wish to leave. I see it in your eyes." Rian nodded slowly. "Yes, my queen. My people in the colony need me. I cannot stay here forever. I have duties there, tasks that only I can perform." The queen studied him silently. "And yet," she said quietly, "your place is here, at least for now. You have proven your courage and your heart. You have taught my people something they forgot. Strength is not only in force, but in loyalty, in thought, in bravery, without thought of reward. That is your gift." Rian bowed his head. "I do not seek gifts or honor. I only want to help those who rely on me. My people, my friends, they are waiting." Alira tugged at his hand. "Stay," she whispered, eyes wide and sincere. "I am afraid when you go." He knelt beside her, pressing a hand to her small shoulder. "I will always protect you, no matter where I am," he said softly. Her trust weighed heavy on him. She had looked to him not only for life, but for guidance and safety. To leave her behind felt wrong. Yet his people needed him. The queen's voice broke the silence. "I will not command you to stay," she said. "I have tried to bind you here, but I cannot take your free will. That is something even a queen cannot take from another being. Yet understand this. The bond of blood and trust you share with my daughter is unbreakable. Even if you return to your people, part of you will always belong here." Rian felt the weight of her words. He had bled for Alira, saved her life, and in doing so, he had formed a connection that could not be undone. It was a gift and a burden. He knew leaving would not sever the bond. She would remember him, and he would remember her. It would follow him across stars, across worlds. Days passed as he prepared for departure. The Avanar assisted him, carrying his belongings and helping him organize the transport back to the colony. The queen and her council met him in the central hall. Their eyes were unreadable, but Rian could feel the respect there. Some counselors still held doubt. Yet, Even they could not deny what he had done. Illyra stood beside her mother. She reached for his hand, and he held it tightly, not wanting to let go. "Remember me," she whispered. "I will," he promised. "Always." The queen's voice resonated in the hall. "Take him," she said to the escort, "but know this, the bond he shares with my daughter and with my people is eternal. Let him walk free, but never think that his heart belongs only to your world. Humanity has shown itself to be more than you believed. Honor him, remember his deeds." Rian felt tears prick his eyes, though he did not let them fall. He looked at Illyra one last time, memorizing the way her hair caught the light, the brightness of her eyes, and the quiet courage in her small hands. He bowed to the queen. She inclined her head in acknowledgement. The transport lifted from the citadel, floating above the shimmering crystal towers. Rian watched the world below shrink as the familiar landscape of alien plains grew distant. He thought of the colony, of the people waiting for him. But he also thought of the queen, the child, the courage he had found within himself. When the transport reached the colony, Rian stepped onto familiar ground. Settlers rushed to greet him, calling his name, relief and joy on every face. He helped wherever he could, fixing pumps, organizing supplies, and ensuring life continued. Yet his mind remained partly in the citadel, with the queen and with Illyra. Each day, he would find a moment to look at the horizon, imagining the glowing towers, the crystal halls, and the child who had trusted him so completely. He knew he would carry that bond with him forever, a reminder of courage, honor, and the weight of choices made in the heat of danger. Time passed, but the memory of the citadel never faded. He spoke sometimes of the Avanar to the settlers, telling tales of crystal gardens, flying creatures, and the child who had taught him bravery in a way no human ever could. They listened in awe, and though they had never seen the alien queen or her daughter, they felt the truth in his words. Humanity had done more than survive. Humanity had shown its heart. One quiet evening, as Rian stood watching the twin suns set across the alien plains, he felt a presence in his mind, a whisper of memory. Illyra's laughter, the queen's gaze, the warmth of trust, they all lingered like light across the horizon. And in that moment, Rian understood the truth. The bond of courage and loyalty cannot be broken by distance or time. It exists wherever the heart is willing to hold it. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of all he had done and all he had learned. He was a simple man who had carried a child to safety, and in doing so, he had changed the course of not just one life, but the fate of two worlds. He smiled faintly, knowing that the queen had been right. Courage and loyalty were gifts that could not be measured in strength or skill alone. They were the measure of the soul. And though he walked once more among his people, fixing the machines, tending the fields, and living a life he had always known, a part of him would always remain with the citadel, with the queen, and with the child who had trusted him more than anyone ever had. The bond was eternal, unseen but undeniable, a quiet light guiding him forward through all the days to come. Rian had returned to his world, but his story, his courage, and his heart had left a mark that neither time nor distance could erase. The queen had refused to let him go, not with chains, but with trust. And in that refusal, she had given him the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that his humanity, in its simplest and bravest form, had been enough to change the fate of worlds.